breakfast, so I don't want to. I'm having breakfast, so that's why I don't.
We're on to recording now. You guys see the screen there?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so we're going to look at the table of contents to start off with. That'll lead us into what we're doing next. So thank you again, and we'll take a break about 11 o'clock. I'll do the drawing for those who did the homework. So I'm going to set my alarm for that time. On the table of contents, it's like the first page or two after the, yeah, okay. Let's see. At 11 a.m., we'll take a 5-minute break. I'll do a drawing for those who did the homework for a $15 gift card from Joe's Flagstone and Landscaping. Later on in the month, we're going to have different partners come in, chat for a few minutes, and offer up some gift cards for finished homework and stuff, like UT and some of the other places. Okay, so here, we've worked on the exclusive right. So a few things that I noticed that I want to share with you that I was not aware of in Command is that when you put in KW Falls Church or whatever the brokers, Fredericksburg or Kingstown's, on page 1, let me go to that page so you guys can see it. So what's happening in Command, it's bleeding over as, you know, it's auto-filling. So on page 1, we're looking for this stuff here. Keller Williams 478 at Yahoo, KW Falls Church at Gmail, and Kingstown Realty Group at Gmail, okay? So that's what you want to go on to page 1 right here, okay? Now, at the very end of the document, okay, the very last page, below the line is where you want to put Shannon's email address. But what's happening in DocuSign is that it brings over the KW Falls Church, Kingstown, and Fredericksburg. So Shannon told me this morning what you need to do, because this is an issue in Command, because it sees that field as the same person. Then you bring a text box in your DocuSign, and then you put Shannon. So it's going to auto-fill in with KW here. Then you just bring yourself a text box in and then put in Shannon or Angela's name here, okay? Their email address, rather. Their name is going to be here. Now, if it does fill in KW United here, I don't think anyone told me it did that they said it was the issue here. But if it does show KW United here, then just bring a text box in and put Shannon's name or Angela's, and then here, put their email address, okay? So
my issue was with the broker name, not the email.
Okay, so yours showed KW United?
Yes.
Mine did as well.
And you were using Command and DocuSign?
Yes.
Okay, so under so if it puts in KW United here, then just bring a text box here, put Shannon Lauderstein or Angela, I'm sorry, I forgot Angela's last name. Sherelle, yeah, I know it was an S. Angela Sherelle here. And then if the email is fine, great. If not, then do the same here, okay?
So it would be their email, correct?
Right, Angela's email or Shannon's goes here.
Okay.
But on page 1 of the broker's agreement, which in your book is page 4, yeah. That should be the KW ones.
Right.
And the reason for doing that again is that those email addresses are monitored by more than one person. So that when anyone's on vacation, there's someone else that can access that are getting these messages. So if a client, for example, were to send a message that they can't find, like Alicia was sharing earlier, when she was in China some years ago, she did not know that she couldn't use her Google in China, her Google address, no one could reach her. So her client was able to, reach out to the brokerage. They couldn't find her. Good morning. Okay. It was, yes. Did you get the email the other day with it on there? Okay. All right. So what's your email address? Monica. Okay. Okay. Monica. N. D. E. L. P. At yahoo.com. Okay. It's KW training. I'm going to forward the message from Sheila from Monday or Tuesday. We were here Tuesday. I was here Monday for DC classes. Okay. Oh, golly. It's amazing how many messages you get in a few days. All right. So remember to, as you're coming on board, go into the chat line and sign in as well. I'm sorry? KW training. Yeah, KW training. Right. Okay. Well, the password is, I gave you the password. Yeah. The KW training. Yeah, okay. Okay. Someone's got a printer or something running in the background. If you guys can mute, that would be great. Thank you. Okay. Okay. All right. So so let's go back to the table of contents, so we can talk about these other documents that are required to use. Okay. So in your book, as you can see, they're not in a numerical order here because they're used. For example, the affiliated business, they call it an ABA, but it's affiliated business disclosure. But and then the cyber notices are used in several areas. So they're in the miscellaneous group below. There's understanding your rights under the Virginia Condo Property Owners Act. Useful information. The residential disclosure statement. For those who've been in the business before July, this is something that's new, okay? When you're making an offer, if you look down here in the listing package, the seller has to provide the D4 residential disclosure, okay? That's something they have to provide. It's a very simple document that just says, unless I disclose something, it's a buyer beware state. And there was a link that took the buyers to the information that basically reiterated all that. Now they're asking, because people are not going to that site and it's become an issue, now they're asking that we provide this document. Okay, so it's now a new thing. Okay, so let's start going through these documents and then we'll get into the listing side.
Deb, real quick on the residential disclosure statement. So the buyer's agent would send that to the listing agent and have them sign it?
No.
Okay. So can you give us some elaboration? There's just one more sentence on that, please, just so I know how to use it.
Okay, well, let's go through it. And then
okay, sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so this document here is understanding your rights under the Virginia Condominium and Property Association Act. Now, I think Shannon said she may not be requiring this one in command. But if you have someone who's buying in a condo or an HOA community, you should give this to them, okay?
Not
So
to
I
the,
would,
only to the buyer. I'm sorry to interrupt. Only the buyer, not the seller.
correct,
The
we're
seller
talking
doesn't.
buyer right now. We're
Okay.
talking buyer right now, strictly buyer. Because they need to understand what the act says and what their rights and obligations are under the act. It's a lot of information. This used to be in the contract. For those who may not know, the contract has been cut down by 2 pages, and a lot of it contained a lot of this verbiage. So it only applied to those who were doing condo and HOAs. So for those who weren't doing those, it was such a superfluous mess inside the contract and made our contract longer. So they succinctly put it down into this packaging. So this is something you give to the buyer. You can see it's 4 pages long. It's detailed out, and they don't have to go to the website. And then you just have them sign it. That's acknowledging that they've received it, okay? It's not part of your contract. It's strictly part of the buyer's agreement, okay? Then we've got the useful information about real estate transactions. And this is more of what you call your dictionary. It explains who realtors are, what services mean, what the legal requirements are in Virginia, what financing means, insurance, buyers and sellers' duties under FIRPTA. So when you're working with either side, make sure they understand FIRPTA. Most of us don't understand FIRPTA. But you've got this paragraph here that tells you what it is, explains who a foreign person is versus who's not, okay? And so it says section 1445 of the Internal Revenue Service Code, the Foreign Investment in Real Property Tax Act is called FIRPTA. So that's where it comes from. That's what it means. It's the first letter of all those words. May impose a duty on a buyer to withhold a percentage of a minimum of 50% of the gross sales price when a seller is a foreign person. So it may impose a withhold percentage on the buyer. Okay? That's why we want to know if they're a foreign person or not up front when we make the offer, so that the title companies, the IRS, and the seller can get all this worked out before we get to the settlement table. Okay?
Is the term foreign meaning a non-U.S. citizen? What, can you elaborate on that for a second?
A foreign person includes, but is not limited to, a non-resident alien, foreign corporation,
Okay,
foreign
I see.
partnerships, foreign trusts, and foreign estates.
Okay, now I'm reading that.
The seller has to check the right box in the residential sales contract and attach a FIRPTA addendum to the contract if they are a foreign person. In addition, the seller should inform the settlement agent of possible withholding under FIRPTA. So the seller has never paid taxes on the property because they don't have a tax ID. They're, because they're foreign. A lot of foreign entities will get a tax ID, and while they own that property, they will pay all the taxes they're supposed to, especially if they're earning income off of it, right? Like if it's a rental property. But if they don't do that, then before they get to sell it, they have to pay the piper, basically, the Internal Revenue Service, the United States. In addition, the seller should inform the settlement agent of possible withholding under FIRPTA prior to the settlement date. The settlement agent may require the seller and the buyer to execute certain IRS forms, which may include the seller and the buyer's tax identification number, Social Security number, and submit the required withholding on behalf of the buyer. Both the seller and the buyer should seek competent legal, tax, and financial advice concerning these matters in advance of the settlement date.
Deb, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Right. So this particular paragraph, buyer seller duties. So it's saying that the buyer, right, if it's not a US person, it could be charged this 15%. Is that correct? Am I getting that correctly?
Right, it says right here that may impose a duty on a buyer to withhold a percentage of a 50% minimum of the gross sales price when the seller is a foreign person. So if the seller
Okay.
doesn't have the money, the buyer may have to pay the piper. That's why you want
Okay.
to know up front.
Okay, that is if the seller does not have the money, right? Because I am licensed in Maryland. I know for foreigners, they get charged if they don't have, U.S. citizenship. They get charged that. But this is just a notification to the buyer that in Virginia, that in case the seller does not have enough money, the buyer will be responsible.
Well, this isn't really just Virginia. This is
That's
actually
different. That'd be
IRS
correct.
law. You just probably not run into it in Maryland, but it's IRS law. More and more they're putting the onus on this. The IRS wants its money. So if they're not going to get it out of the seller, they're going to try to get it out of the buyer. Okay. That's why it says may.
Okay.
Yes, go ahead, Monica.
Thank you.
Doesn't have any system because, like, let's suppose the buyer is from Germany, China. What happens here?
Well, it says the buyer, it doesn't say the buyer has to have a social security number, only the seller. So it doesn't matter when a buyer buys. A foreign person can buy and there's no penalties. They don't have to pay the IRS anything. It's only when they sell that the money is due to the IRS. Okay. Now, same thing here, whether the buyer is a foreign person or not. The IRS could potentially keep 50% of the gross sales price, which means the buyer could potentially have to pay more than, So this is one of those questions for the tax. If you ever run into someone who is a FERPTA person, you want to make sure, working with your title company, that they have done all their paperwork with the IRS. And now pre-COVID, it used to take a minimum of 15 days and sometimes 30 days to get all that paperwork signed. So it's not an easy process. And if someone hasn't been paying taxes all along, then that's where it becomes an issue. Okay. Okay, again, back to glossary matters. And most of these things are covered throughout other documents, just re-explaining to the buyer and the seller, because this document goes to both sides, this particular one, as to what these things mean. Okay. And then like home energy information, I do not answer those questions whatsoever. I am not an energy expert. Just because someone has stamped refrigerators being energy efficient does not necessarily mean that it covers any type of tax benefit. So refer them to the websites about the home energy efficiency, the green energy, all that. Okay. Throughout your documents, you're always going through types of representation. You're going to reiterate it here. Again, this is a dictionary for the buyer and seller to refer back to see what party is what party. Okay. And then you get them to sign it. Okay.
Hey, Deb,
Yeah.
quick question back to the FERPTA for a second. Would that be an example of one of the items that the buyer could have an add-on? So just like a home inspection, just like, the didn't get appraised for what we thought it would get appraised for, et cetera. Is that an example of an out where, they say, okay, well, the seller, you're going to have to pay these taxes to the IRS because the seller doesn't have them. Can the seller at that point, sever the purchase agreement?
The buyer, no, there's nothing in here.
I'm sorry, the buyer. Can the buyer sever the purchase
It's
agreement?
not a contingency. There's nothing in here that allows that. It's just stating a plain fact. So going into an offer,
Uh-huh.
if the buyer is aware and you're told that the seller is a FERPTA person, then I would certainly make sure my client understands this paragraph and what their potential risk could be. I would have them talk to their lender. It's pretty rare that it happens, but the IRS is going to cover themselves. And it's kind of newer that they're putting it on the buyer to make sure it's performed.
so sorry, just one more point, because I mean, this is new and it's really sort of alarming, I guess.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Okay. So as a buyer's agent doing your due diligence for the buyer, before you put the offer in, and this is going to get ugly because of timing and all that, especially in the seller's market, you would need to go to whom to validate that the seller would be obligated to pay all of their required IRS taxes. Would that be the listing agent?
Well,
Or how do you check that square before you put an offer in so you don't get your buyer in trouble?
you go to the listing agent and you say, is your seller a foreign person? Do we need a FERPTA addendum?
A FERPTA addendum. Okay.
And then at that point, it's up to the buyer, the seller, to work with the IRS to make sure all the documents are done and their title company. Okay. Not to say they're going to do it, but it's in the contract. Now, I don't know if any court cases ever came up about that, but I'm sure if it can't close because of something that the seller has done, because that means they're in default, right? When you look at the default paragraph of the contract, the buyer will probably be able to get out of it. But it's not necessarily a contingency on the buyer's behalf at this point.
Okay.
Okay. So because they made the responsibility that of the buyer, I, as a buyer's agent, I am proactive. Ask the listing agent, is your client a foreign person? And I had one instance where they said, oh, it's an American. I'm like, okay. But then the seller told them, no, I am a foreign investor. Because just someone based on your skin color and your speech pattern does not make you a foreign person, one way or the other.
Sure.
You know? And so, people are living here for many different reasons, especially in our area. We're a very diverse area here.
Mm-hmm.
So you cannot base on anyone's speech pattern, their skin color, anything about them, their ethnic background, because they could or could not be. You just have to ask the question, are you or are you not a foreign investor? Okay. And the person themselves could be an American, but the company that they're representing who owns the property could be a foreign investor too, see, and they can be the signator for that party. So that's the thing, because it's not just a person, it could be an entity as well. Okay. So now as a listing agent, and we'll get to that later, there's a form that assists that you put online, documentation. I used to do my own, and I would clearly say to people, here's how I want you to make the offer, and the seller is American citizen, no FERPTA needed. And there it's done. You're done like that. It makes it easy to write an offer. But majority of agents, unlike you guys, are not trained. No one goes through this stuff with them. They find out it by accident. That's why so many arguments happen. That's why so much heartache happens amongst agents, because they themselves do not know what the contract actually says. They've learned something incorrectly from hearsay, and they've never stopped and read what the paragraph said. Yes, sir. Absolutely. The question was, before you even start writing an offer, do you ask the listing agent? Yes, absolutely. I still transaction coordinate for a couple people from days of old, from almost 20 years ago, on an occasional basis when they need some extra help. And when they send me a document and says, we want to write an offer, here's the particulars on this property, the first thing I do is send an email to that other agent. I do it in writing. I don't call them. I do it in writing. I send an email to that listing agent. I CC the agent I'm working with, and I ask them, do you need a FERPTA addendum? Is your client a foreign entity, person or entity? And then that agent can answer me back, I'll ask that question. I've not been asked that question. Monica's question was, could you add a paragraph or an addenda to the offer to state that it's only valid if all the taxes are paid up to date. They don't have to be paid up to date. They have to be able to be paid at closing. Yeah, right. So I'll ask that and see. I'll ask David what he thinks about that, the attorney. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so FERPTA, people seem to gloss over that. Other parts of the state, it's probably not a big deal, but in our area, it can be a big deal. Okay. Yeah. Because you don't have to be a citizen to buy property. You never have had to be. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
It almost seems like it's almost analogous to a lien on the title in a way. I mean, it's not a lien, but it's analogous to that because it's money owed.
It's an IRS lien in the true sense of the word.
Yeah, it's like an IRS lien.
Yeah.
I mean, so title insurance, it would seem, I'm just making something up, but it would seem that title insurance should cover that.
It doesn't.
Okay.
In
Good
fact,
to know.
title insurance has to be clear and marketable. There's certain things. Honestly, personal experience for me, when I sold my property in Ruston, we had a particular, I won't use their name, they've changed it now anyway, but internet service that was pretty lousy. So we got rid of it. The last bill was $25. My husband took the box back to the location, turned the box in, had them sign the papers, gave them the $25 in a money order because we didn't have checks. I haven't had checks for almost 2 decades. Wow. And they never recorded receiving that money, nor did they ever bill me. I had a P.O. box. But then a year later, when I went to sell my property, all of a sudden this $25 lien popped up with this company, and we had to go through. Fortunately, I had the copy of that money order for $25.65, but they had to get that cleaned up. So it took time, The title company said, by the way, this has to be cleared up before we can move forward. It took a couple hours to get it resolved. They just, for whatever reason, had it as an outstanding bill, was not billing me, but had reported it to the 3 entities. So that doesn't, so anyway.
Good story.
So yeah, so that's how, that's just, $25.65. I was willing to even pay it that day. I was so mad, but just to get the deal closed. Anyway, so that was the same place my husband cost me $2,200 from talking to the other person. So. Okay, so now here's the document that we all have to give out to our buyers. Okay, this is not part of the contract. Okay, it's not supposed to be added to the contract. It's a required notice for buyers to exercise necessary due diligence. Okay, there's another document from the DPOR that's called the residential disclosure. That part is part of the contract, and we'll get to that when we get later on. But this particular document is informational purposes only. So the Virginia Residential Property Disclosure Act, okay? And it's saying that the condition, the owners of the residential real property make no representation or warranties as to the condition of the real property or any improvements thereon, or with regard to any covenants, restrictions, and or conveyances of mineral rights as may be recorded among the land records, affecting the real property or any improvements thereon, and purchaser advised to exercise whatever due diligence a particular purchase deems necessary, including obtaining home inspection as defined, and residential building energy analysis as defined, in accordance with the terms and conditions that may be contained in the real estate purchase contract, but in any event prior to settlement pursuant to such contracts. So the first sentence basically says it all. The seller doesn't have to really tell you anything. It's a buyer beware state, okay? And you as agents listing and selling both, you're obligated to disclose anything that you're made aware of, okay? Now, in Virginia, when you buy a piece of land, you own the land that it sits on, what's underneath the land, and the airspace above the land, right? Now you could be setting on some type of material that someone wants to mine, and you could be giving them mineral rights. Well, there should be a document that says that, and that would have to be conveyed to the new buyer, okay, if you're giving away your mineral rights, okay. So anyway, so this is just going down explaining, again, it's almost a glossary, a dictionary of what all these things mean, what sexual offenders mean. You are not obligated to read this to your client. It's for their understanding. Before, the state would give them a hyperlink that took them to this information, that people were not going there, and then they had issues with some of this stuff because it wasn't explained to them, though they signed the disclosure saying that they got the information and they knew where to go get it, okay? But we have to handle, yes, go ahead.
Hey.
Have a question? Does someone have a question? If not,
Okay.
get yourself-
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Can you mute yourself? Thank you. So anyway, so radon gas, do not ever let someone, like a neighbor, say to your client, oh, we had a radon test done in this house. We didn't have radon. I wouldn't waste your money on that. You know, the goody two-shoe neighbor next door. Radon is a naturally occurring gas that can happen anywhere. A whole neighborhood can be without gas and one house could have it, and vice versa. Donna Free and Associates did an inspection years ago, and a 3rd-story condo. It was the way it was built. It was a wood structure, the way some pipe came up in a little exterior, column. Anyway, the 3rd-story condo actually had radon. So the 3rd condo up had radon. But because of the way the structure was built, brought to his attention that they should check it. So, deflector drywall, okay. And then the lead-based pipes. So then we have additional written disclosures, okay. So this information is provided as a resource and does not constitute legal advice, okay. Again, you're just giving them information as to what this means, okay. You're providing it to them. It's for them to read. Now, as you notice here, there is no signature page, but you have to, if you ever go to court, the judge goes, well, how do I know you gave this to them? Well, you can just have them initial this last page here. Just write down here somewhere. The broker doesn't have to initial it. Just have your clients just drag their initials here on this last page. All right, so that is what constitutes your buyer's agreement. So the part of your homework for this week is you're going to, those who have not finished their homework, please do so. I want you to put your buyer's agreement together and then add all the addenda that goes along with it. If you don't have access to Command, then please use the documents that you have in a PDF. Just print them off, handwrite them in. There's not a lot to fill in on these documents, the extraneous documents, but put together a whole package. Preferably you can do it in Command. And then for those in Falls Church and Fredericksburg, you need to send those to Shannon for her approval, okay? So she wants you to practice sending it to her. So you load them up into Command in the PDF forms, whether they're handwritten or from Command itself. And then, and if you don't have Command at all because you're brand new, then you can certainly send a PDF to Shannon, okay, to review. So that needs to be done this weekend. So Monday by 5 p.m., you need to have sent to Shannon. Now, when it comes to Kingstown right now, I have not spoke to Angela. So I'm going to ask that you guys send those to me for now, because I know Kingstown uses a different source for compliance. So I don't want to overload Angela right now. So for those that are in Kingstown, in your Command, and someone today used their Command and DocuSign and sent me their documents, which is fine. I won't be your broker. Just put me in there as, you know, just someone who receives them, okay?
So we CC you, Deb, on our package that goes to, let's say, Shannon, if we're
That would be
Fredericksburg.
great, because you can do that. In DocuSign, you could send it to someone to receive a copy. Yeah, so in Command and DocuSign, you can put me in there, and then I'm not someone who needs to sign, but you can put me down as to receive a copy. Great idea. So I know, so I can keep track of who's doing that. Okay, and those who are received by 5 p.m. on Monday will go in another drawing for some, another gift card. You have to do your homework regardless. This is a requirement from your leadership that you guys practice this, so that when you do get your first offer, your questions on the basics should be very minimal because you've gone through boot camp. Your leadership is still willing to help you because there's a nerve factor that's going to set in. It's a natural process. You're going to become nervous. You're going to become anxious because it's a real live thing. But practice does not make perfect. It just makes you more practiced. You know, we all make mistakes. We all miss something. But the more you practice doing it, practice using Command, then it benefits you in the long run. The other homework, so today's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Now, most of you are probably doing this for PC, I'm assuming, but you need to write 5 notes a day and take pictures. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday by 5 p.m. So I'll either get 4 pictures from you of 5 cards each, or 1 picture of 20 cards, right? Stamped and addressed. Your envelopes, okay? And that group will go in another drawing. And that's homework for every week. 20 cards a week, minimum, to show me that you're doing your work. And again, that should dovetail with those who are doing PC. Are you guys doing no cards in your productivity coaching? Maybe not yet.
So Deb, they're allowing us to do emails.
Okay. Well, I'm making you do note cards because Steve wants you to do note cards.
They've had
Okay.
Ignite for the last 4 weeks, so we are supposed to be doing note cards in that.
Yeah, no cards and emails.
Yes.
So the note cards, and it can be to your sphere. Now this week, try to keep it to your sphere and family and friends. And it doesn't have to talk about real estate. It can just be a note card. Hey, just thinking about you. You know, we're all sick of COVID. How are you doing? Just a simple little, you know, Brian Buffini taught us years ago, if you use, and you can use a colorful Sharpie even now. They have different thicknesses of Sharpies. But if you use a little bit thicker Sharpie, then your note card's not too in depth. It's just a quick note. Just checking in. How are you? How are you doing during COVID? How's the family? You know, or if it's someone's birthday, by all means, send them a birthday card. You don't have to have these long letters and stuff. It's why it's a note card. They're not that big. Not a whole lot of verbiage on there. You know, are you looking forward to the fall weather? You know, anything. And if you know, the more you know about somebody, the more you can personalize. 5 a day between now, and so it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday between 5 p.m. on Monday, and I want to see the stamps on there and the addresses, because you just writing a card doesn't mean you're going to actually put them in an envelope and stamp them. Years ago, I wrote out 200 Christmas cards. I had needed to go get stamps. I was really busy back in the heyday of the market. And somewhere along the way, someone in my family must have been cleaning off my dresser, because 3 years later, I found all those 200 Christmas cards unstamped.
Oh.
Unstamped. So I wrote a note on the back. I said, I don't know why I wrote it here 3 years ago, but here's the card. And I sent them out. So anyway.
For homework, then we have to do the buyer agreement through Command with the agenda and then these note cards, correct?
Right. Right. So get the buyer's agreement that includes all the addenda. That's the main thing. That includes all the addenda.
Question, Deb.
Hang on one second. Monica has a question.
So the Kingston is or I have I think you say
Right. Okay. Kingstown will give you your business cards, but in these first notes, I wouldn't worry about sending a business card. You can certainly say you're becoming a realtor. Yeah. Right. You can certainly say that you're becoming a realtor and stuff, but okay. Okay. Who else had a question?
Deb, I did. Is there any tutorials on how to use command? Sorry, I just got access.
There are lots of tutorials. Check with your tech person in your office or David Donaldson as to where to find them. They're on the YouTube channel. They're all over the place. There's lots and lots, even in command itself. Yeah, there's some quick little videos on the different things.
Okay, and then you said for newbies like me, I can just write basically 5 cards a day to anybody just saying, hey, I'm a new real estate agent?
Yeah, you're welcome to say you're a new real estate agent. What I'm saying, you don't have to. If you don't feel comfortable saying that yet, don't say it. Just get in practice of writing to people, keep it in touch. Think about yourself when you get mail out of the mailbox. When you see something that's handwritten or a note card, is that not the first thing you open?
Yes.
In my case, I stand over the shredder and shred everything else. Yeah, and then I open up my open up that personalized card.
Deb, where will today's recording be found?
Okay, they're always going to be found on your office's YouTube channel.
Okay.
Okay, so when I finish, I let the leadership know that I'm done, and then they have to download it and format it to the YouTube channel. I know the one from Tuesday was put out sometime yesterday because I unfortunately listened to myself. My mother goes, "You sound really nasally. It's awful." I'm like, "I think so too." It's a sinus infection. So anyway, so now let's go on to listings. Okay, let's see what time we've got. We'll start the listing. Okay, so you're a buyer's agent. So we'll backtrack. So with a buyer's agent, your PC coaches and stuff are going to work with you on most of this stuff. But as a buyer's agent, you're getting them to sign the documents, and then you're going to move forward with them into setting up into Bright what their search would be. Okay, and that's something you're going to be probably through your coaches and your productivity and United Group stuff. I don't normally teach that. But if anyone's struggling with that up front, or you get a client and you need to help understanding how to set something up in Bright, you're certainly welcome to reach out to me, but I don't teach that. Okay. All right. So some of these paragraphs are not going to read because they're identical to the one that's in the buyers. And then others are not, but okay, the exclusive right to sell agreement. So one of the confusing languages is when you see the word sell here, which is for the seller, but you're the listing agent. A buyer's agent is referred to as the selling agent. So that confuses a lot of people at the beginning. A selling agent does not mean you represent the seller. It means you're representing the buyer in the sale of a property. So you'll hear the word selling agent and buyer's agent often interchanged, okay? And then the listing agent is the one who represents the seller in the exclusive right to sell a listing agreement, okay? So again, the day that you're going to meet with your client, or the day you would put that in there, and then let me just check the chat line if anyone has any specific questions. But again, remember to, great, thank you for someone who ever put that out there about how to find the how-to videos. Okay, And if you haven't already signed on in the chat to say that you're here, please do so. All right. Then we've got the firm name, KW Space United. We're all the same there now. Okay. Okay, so then the appointment of the broker. In consideration of the services provided by a broker and described in this agreement, seller hereby appoints broker as seller's sole and exclusive listing agent and grants the broker the exclusive right to sell the real estate described below, known as the property. So this is where we start looking different from the buyer's agreement, is we're going to start describing the property, okay? Now, you're going to get this information from the MLS and the listing itself and the tax record, okay? So my suggestion is always to cut and paste, okay? You're going to have two windows open, and you're going to toggle back and forth between your MLS and your documents, okay? So that you're cutting and pasting. The more you can cut and paste, the less likely you're going to transpose a number, the less likely you're going to forget. As long as you're paying attention to what you're copying, okay? Make sure you get the full line, the full number, but whatever the street address says. So 1234 Main Street, okay? Now, on the document here, they always have the unit number separate, but I have found that in most of the online document platforms, it does not always feed over. So the unit number does not always feed over as a unit number. So we always put it here as well. So we would do 1234 Main Street, comma, and maybe it's apartment or number or suite, whatever it is, number, you can do the number sign 354, for example, okay? And then you can always put it over here as well. But this way, you at least know it's going to get replicated everywhere else on all the documents. Now, some of the documents may not have a separate unit number there. Okay.
Deb, I have a question.
Sure.
Right. So I have used zip forms before.
Yep.
Right.
Right.
And it's able to connect directly the information from Bright and upload it into this form. I've done that for Maryland and DC.
Right.
I see I have access to the Northern Virginia real estate forms in zip form.
Right.
So I'm thinking, will that be like a preference rather than having to copy and paste from Bright if we have access to zip form to kind of just pull that information through to populate this field?
Yes. Now remember, you're always going to have to upload the PDFs into Command if you're not going to go directly to Command, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Now, even with zip forms, I've used zip forms for a long time myself. Even with zip forms, not all the information flows over. It really is who did the pointing from each document to the fields. So whereas Maryland, DC, and Virginia have different fields, for example, sometimes it doesn't come over. So yes, you can use that link to pull it in, and you pay for that. It's a separate fee. And then, but then you need to go back through yourself and double check that did the tax record should come up correctly. Okay, so make sure you always have the tax map or ID number here. And when it comes to parking spaces and storage units, these two things pertain only to condominium places where a parking spot or storage unit is deeded with the unit. So, for example, there could be some high-rises, say in Arlington, for example, where when you look at the tax record, it might say Summerfield House, Unit 3, PS 5, which means parking spot 5, SB, storage bin 3, okay? So that means those things are deeded with the unit itself. Okay, it's all one package. Okay, some people may have purchased a condo where one property was deeded with, one parking spot was deeded with the condo, but then they were on the ground floor when it was first built and they were able to buy extra parking spots. They have their own deed. Okay, you're going to have a client somewhere along the way is going to call you in extreme excitement because they found somewhere in Arlington that's being sold for under $100,000, and they are incredibly excited and they want you to write an offer for all cash in the next 15 minutes. And you're just simply going to say, oh, that's a parking spot. Because someone is selling their parking spot. You know, they bought it along the way. Recently, we had a situation where a unit was sold, it was listed, and the directions for people to park was, for example, let's say parking spot 1, which was next to the elevator, okay? And so you can parking spot 1, take the elevator up to the unit from the garage. So this was an advantage for the person purchasing the property. But when her agent wrote the offer, what was deeded with that property was parking spot 100. So the person who owned the unit owned parking spot 1 separately from parking spot 100. But during the viewing of the house, it said you can park, it was parking spot 1. So the person who was doing this had a physical ailment and thought it was great. Now, nowhere in the listing, nowhere in the deed, and nowhere in the tax record did it ever indicate that that was the parking spot that with that. Her buyer's agent did not fill these fields in. They just assumptively presume that because they could park there during the open house or during showings, it was what conveyed.
Yeah. Isn't that the listing agent's obligation to divulge that information?
They should.
Well, whose responsibility is it?
Well, in the listing said parking spot 100.
Oh, okay.
The record says parking spot 100.
Okay.
No, it was there. The buyer's agents just didn't pay attention.
Oh, okay.
They just it was spot 1. Yeah, no, it was the listing agent did everything they were supposed to do. Now, where the listing agent was at fault, in my belief, in that whole situation, was when they got the offer, when that parking spot was left blank, they should have put it there. Okay. Just for clarification, but this is how things go wrong because most people do not fill those spots in. They just totally ignore them.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even tell you how many contracts I've received where the tax ID is never filled in, where the address is halfway filled in. You know, it's like, okay, people, you need the zip code. Virginia is filled in for you because this is the Virginia contract. Whereas in Maryland and DC, you have to put in which state because you're using the same regional contract.
Mm-hmm.
But here, Virginia is already pre-populated, but at least put the zip code in, for heaven's sakes. You know, and it's based on the tax record. Now, there's some areas like Herndon that the zip code is 20171, and it's Herndon, and oh gosh, what's the other name? I just went totally blank. Oak Hill. So Oak Hill and Herndon, they're both, years ago, were all Herndon, and they became a separate entity. So they have the same zip code, but they refer to it as Oak Hill as far as the mail goes and stuff like that, but the tax record still may have Herndon, okay? So when I run in those situations, you know, I always double check with the title company and say, is it okay if I put in, you know, they're insistent that it says Oak Hill here, even though the tax record says Herndon.
Coming from a title company, having used these agreements literally every day of my life, the more info and the more accurate your information is that you give to the title company, the faster and easier it is. Please support.
Amen.
Oh my God! Just if you want to like avoid errors and like those parking spaces thing, make sure it is all filled in. So
right.
I'll get off myself.
Most agents do not.
That's correct.
So now, in subdivisions and areas where there's growth and buildup of homes and we're in close proximity to each other, we're going to use the legal description here, which is the lot, block, and subdivision. Okay, down here, the meets and bounds, that's usually going, and it says see attached description or a survey. Meets and bounds is when you're out in the country where I am, and they say that the oak tree at the intersection of 211, you go 150 clicks, and then you turn left at the burnt down barn. You know, those are types of, it's surveys, meets and bounds that are giving geographical descriptions of those properties, okay? Now, over time, some of those descriptors have been replaced with iron in the ground or something. But, you can look at some old deeds like that, and I've sold quite a few land, and I'm listing land, and some of it's like that, and heaven forbid you don't know what an oak tree is from an elm tree because you're trying to figure it out. So fortunately we have Google these days. So then again, is it a historical district or not? Is it designated? Yes or no? It's there. Mailboxes. Okay, now this can be in an area where, whether it's a single family home, a condo, a townhouse, HOA or not, where all the mailboxes could be in a group setting or on a street corner in banks. Okay, it's our break time. Anyway, let me finish this sentence. So you want to make sure what the box number is. I have been at listings where the person says, I don't know my box number. I'm the top one from the left, third one in, So before you leave that day, you need to walk down there because it needs to be in your listing because you need to put that online in MLS, okay? Now, when you're changing, when a buyer comes in, they should have all their locks changed. They should do it. They just need to do that, including their mailbox key. So when you see those bank of mailboxes that stand on those little posts, when you go behind the post, there's a number, okay? You go to the local post office that feeds that area. You take your settlement document with you and your identification, and for roughly $10 to $15, they will give you a new set of, they will come out and redo the lock and give you a new set of keys. But they need that number that's on the back of that post, okay? So let's take a 5-minute break, and while I do that, I'm going to call out a couple names here, and if I've missed your homework, because I've got a lot of emails since I've been here this morning, but I have homework from Jeff, who was the first person, yay. So your name's in there twice for the drawing. I've got Jen, Brittany, Sherry, Kate, and Bish. Anybody else give me their homework this morning and I missed it?
Andy Fawn.
I'm sorry, Andy?
Yeah.
Is yours under a different name?
No.
Did you send it to me?
1:30 in the morning.
Huh?
1:30 in the morning.
1:30 in the morning, okay. Did you send it in DocuSign or just in a text?
In an email.
Okay. I don't see it, so double check the spelling of my name and send it again. Sometimes your emails will make my name Debrief instead of DEBRUEF. It'll automatically change it to Debrief. So I'll put your name down here. I'll go on, I believe what you say, okay? Okay, Raekwon, can you come over here for me? Okay. I just want you to close your eyes.
You actually emailed me back and said, thank you, others noticed the same.
Okay, well, good. Then I've got you down here anyway. So I just don't see it on my email here, but I must have. So I try to respond. Did I respond at midnight? Okay, close your eyes and just take the pin. Well, no, you just use your finger and just point at a name. You can fill the cardboard, okay? And now just point at one of the names. It was Jeff, okay?
Oh.
So Raekwon So Jeff, I'm going to send you a $15 Amazon gift card unless you prefer from somewhere else. I'll just get an email form. Okay. Congratulations, Jeff. Okay, so we'll reconvene at 11:10. So if you guys want to take a quick breather. And so let me see if I can go out and show you guys. Since most of you are newbies and you have no clue what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Bright. Are you guys seeing that screen come up that I'm typing in Bright?
No.
Okay, so I will, once I get it up, I'll go back and reconnect it. That's one thing about Zoom. Sometimes the, all right, so stop sharing. Okay, now I'm gonna reshare my screen, which is there. Now do you guys see where it says join us for online training? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now when you're working with the client to do a listing, you're not going to find a listing. You might find an old one, but you're going to go to the search bar here. And the search bar has property types, all kinds of different searches, but you're mainly looking for public record, okay? I'm going to do one of my house I sold a couple years ago. My home a couple years ago. Go ahead.
I have a quick question. I have to jet in a few minutes. Are we able to watch this online?
Yes, you'll be able to watch it through your office's YouTube channel.
Okay.
Probably by tomorrow sometime.
Okay, and do we still get credit for being here today if I watch it later? Okay. All right, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, bye-bye.
Okay, so I'm going to use my, now as I type this in, if you guys look down here, it says there's one match. So there's no other 7509 Lyle Avenue anywhere in New Jersey, Virginia, etc. But in some street addresses, you could have 10. So then you'd want to put in the county or the state. But in this case, I'm just going to go forward and open up the one. Okay. So this is the tax record for this property. Okay. And as you scroll down, so at the very top is the tax ID right here on the right. Okay. The 0401 space 03 space 0426. Now, years ago, that's not how it used to read. It would read something like 0401 space dot space dash whatever. It was very confusing. And as you can see down here, the old tax ID, see how different that is? Because they're truncating some of the details. Now they've made it easier. So if you're going to type it, you could certainly type it, but I always say copy and paste. Okay.
With the spaces, keep the spaces in there?
Yes, because that's part of it. That's why I say copy and paste. If you look down here how the old one used to be, it was impossible. It was nearly impossible to type that into the search engine and get the address you're looking for because you don't know what spacing they put in there. And we always copied and pasted in to find a tax. You know, when you input your listing, you have to use the tax ID. So it's better to copy and paste it. So here's the geographical information. It's in Fairfax. It's unincorporated, so it's not the city like the City of Falls Church or the town of Vienna. Okay, it's unincorporated. Okay, tells me what the high school district is, and over here it tells me what the lot is. If I needed to put in this subdivision plot page, it tells me where that is. Okay, what district I'm in. Most of this we don't need for our listings, but we do need legal description. So as you're looking through your listing, one of the easiest things to do, because every county, every state, the way they feed this stuff into the MLS, it comes up differently sometimes. So in Mac, you do Command F, and on a PC, you do Control F. And then you can put in the word lot, for example, and then it's going to take you to what the lot is, okay? And if there's more than one lot, like here it says lot characteristics, okay? And I'd already gone past the word lot up here, but it's there. So it says, you know, lot, there's my lot number. I'm scanning down here and I'm like, oh, what year was this built? I can't find the year. You know, you're in a hurry, you can't figure it out. I haven't gone far enough down the page, 1953. But I could have put up here, I could have put in year or build and found that information quickly, okay? Then in Virginia, you're also being asked for legal description. So you would copy what the legal description is here, okay? All right, so that's just the idea with where you're going to get your stuff from. And then you have, so that's public record. Then there's the tax history. You know, if there's flood reports, last listings, there's the things up here you can glean information from, but most of it you don't need in filling out your listing agreement, okay? So let me close out of here and go back to our other document. Okay, back to here. I saw all your faces pop up for a second. Okay, all right, so again, now here, we don't use legal description in this part of the listing agreement, but you will use it in the contract, okay? So that's where the word legal description, the whole phrase will come into play. Here, your legal description is broken down. County, municipality, so Fairfax, or it's the City of Falls Church, Alexandria City, could be Fairfax / Town of Vienna type thing. And then deed book and page, that's a good place to use your Control F or Command F. So you do deed book and page, depending on what county you're in. It could say liber, L-I-B-R-E, or it could say folio for page, Latin terms for the two of those words. Okay. Then if you're selling land or you are out in the country and it's not a block or subdivision, then it could be meets and bounds, and you would have to use that one and then attach a survey. MLS description. As someone who transaction coordinated for our agents years and years ago and had a lot of them I did it for, this was a blessing when I saw this first show up on this document, because these are the typical questions that I would not get answered from the listing agent. And then I would go to input their listing into Bright and I would have to answer these questions. These are often the forgotten questions. So it's really cool that they're here. So the number of levels. Okay, is it a 1, 2, 3 level? Is it a walk-in with a basement? Means it's subterranean, all or in part. So if you have a 3 or 4 story townhouse and you're walking in on the ground level, that's not a basement. You know, your main level could be level 2 where your kitchen or something is. So that's lower level 1. And then you have main level, upper level 1, upper level 2. Okay. But unless it's subterranean, that's truly not a basement, okay? It's a mistake a lot of people make. So you would say if it's a 4-story townhouse and it's a walk-in and it's on a slab, there is no basement. So the answer is no, there's no basement, that is 4 stories. What type of basement? Well, there's no basement, so that's blank. What's the architectural style? I'm going to send you guys a link to NAR, which has a breakdown of what the architectural styles look like. Kind of helps you. Not everything's a colonial, people. For whatever reason, when people can't figure something out, they say colonial. It's not always a colonial. It's better to put other than a colonial. If someone is specifically looking for a colonial and they get a townhouse, because someone put it as a colonial. Now, some townhouses have a colonial look to them or whatever, okay? Disability access, yes or no? Cut and dry answer. If there's a lot of stairs, there's not an elevator, there is no disability access, okay? Right, right. Yeah, ramps, everything. There has to be access for someone who is fully disabled to get inside that unit, okay? If there is a basement, what's the basement entrance type? Is it a walk up, a walk out, a walk down? I've been in basements that are, the home was built on a hill, and when you walk out of the basement, you actually walk down into the yard. Okay, I've been in some where you walk up into the yard, and others where you walk straight out, okay? And then where is the door to the basement? Is it in the rear? Is it in the front? Is it on the side? You need to know that when you put it in MLS, it's going to ask you that question. So when you're there, you need to pay attention, and you're doing your listing agreement, you're walking through the property. You want to answer these questions, because when you get busier as an agent, you don't want to be home at midnight or trying to relate to your transaction coordinator or have them contact you. Oh, where's the basement entrance? Because I can't trigger this live till we know. You know, that's why it's important. Okay. And then, so the other types of basement is a full basement means this is my home above ground. And let's say it's, 40 feet by 36 feet. Is my basement completely the same underneath? Okay, that's a full basement. That has nothing to do with the finishing. That has everything to do that it's the exact footprint or close to it of the floor above. Okay, so it's a full basement. Okay, now if it's finished down below, then that's where you get into fully finished. The whole basement's been finished, which means it has walls, electricity, flooring, ceiling. It doesn't have to be painted, but it can't just be exposed insulation that's not finished. That's partially, so you would say of the basement, if it's 2,000 square feet and all but 500 square foot, which is a quarter of it, is finished, then it's 75% full, finished, fully finished, 25% not finished, right? So 500 square feet not finished, 1,500 square feet is finished. So you detail that out in the listing.
Deb?
Yes.
2-second admin question. A lot of these fields have a fixed length. Where do you put that extra information if it doesn't fit in the fixed length field in Bright? Or are the fields extendable?
Well, in Bright, there's drop-down menus.
But let's say you're describing that basement and you run out of space in the field. Where do you put the extra information on the basement? Do you make a footnote at the bottom of the doc? Or of the, what's that?
Are you talking about online in Bright or on
Yes,
this document?
online in Bright. Or in this document. It's the same question, 2 different environments.
Well, here you would just put, you can make yourself a note anywhere on
Right.
the situation. You don't have to make the note on here as what the partiality is, the square foot difference. In Bright, it'll ask how many square foot. It'll say unfinished square footage, you put in a number. Square footage, you put in a number.
Mm-hmm.
Finished square footage, you put in a number. Unfinished square footage, you put in a number.
Right.
Okay. It may differ from the tax record. Okay. And if it does differ from the tax record, good question. Let's say I bought the house 3 years ago. It had a full basement and it was partially finished. But I finished it out with the tax record because I didn't have to get any permits, because let's say the wiring was already there. All I did was put in drywall, ceilings, and carpet. Okay. I didn't have to get a permit for that. So I'm going to say now I have a fully finished basement, where the tax record may say partially finished. Okay. So, this is for you and your transaction coordinators to understand, where things are. Attic, same thing with the attic. Is there an attic in the home? Okay. And so you need to know what type of attic access is. Is it a drop down? So generally speaking, like if you look at the ceiling tiles in here, they're about 2x4. So if you have a 2x4 opening, generally they have stairs attached to them that you pull down and they pop open. Never assume when it's a 2x4 that someone has the stairs attached. You always need to ask your seller, you know, and plus you want to see in the attic. Yeah. And I always ask my client, what's in the attic? Oh, it's full of all of our stuff. Okay, that's your first priority, is get the attic cleaned out. Because when the home inspector comes, they need to see the attic. Okay, so do you have pull down stairs? Are they functioning? Okay, and then if it's just a little square, like a 2x2, that's usually a pop-up where someone needs an external ladder. So there's attic access, and then you find out, does the attic have a floor on it? And that means the floor is attached. So that means someone has nailed wood to the beams, okay? It doesn't mean that someone has thrown some plywood up there that allows you to walk on it, but it can slip on you, okay? That's not a flooring, okay? So then you need to find those things out. Years ago, that was not something that agents looked for, but it was always an MLS. So my daughter, she would be my scribe when I would go do listings and measurements, and she'd walk around and write everything in for me. And she would always run around and tell me, oh, Mama, I found the attic. It's in the master bedroom closet. You know, it's a pop-up, you know, whatever. Because she knew how important that was. She heard me over the years calling agents at night going, I can't trigger your listing live because you didn't tell me what type of attic it was. Okay? So it's very important to know, because you have to answer in MLS what it is. And now in split level homes, attics could be partial. So it's not a full attic above the house, just like a basement. It's just a small side attic or partial attic, okay? Type of exterior. Is it vinyl? Is it brick? Is it brick vinyl? Is it hardy plank? Is it whatever? You know, is it stone? Is it real stone? Is it fake stone? So whatever it is, now you're going to get some of that information from the tax record based on the last time it was sold, but it may or may not be accurate. So you physically inspect it. Most places are not full brick. The majority of them are brick veneer. Some of the older homes could be full brick. That means it's brick built. Brick veneer means it's wood structure built, brick is stuck to the outside. It can be a full brick. I suggest you guys go online and look at what brick is. Those that are here, you can see there's like pieces that jut out, like the header bricks and stuff. Sometimes that's decorative, but sometimes in a brick built place, you have to have header bricks, okay? But when it's brick veneer, it's just brick that's attached to a wood structure. So it's a good idea for you to, as you're getting into real estate, look at some of these terminologies for yourself to understand what it is. My sister had bought a home for her in-laws, and after she got her insurance, because the listing said it was brick, but the insurance company sent someone out to verify and said, oh no, your home is brick veneer, which it was. And, but it was listed as brick. So brick is more costly to insure than brick veneer because it's more costly to build. So, right. So anyway, so as you're walking through the home, you're going to get this information. Okay. Now it's your coaches are going to work with you and Drew and Ty and Eric on how you meet your sellers and when and how you walk through the home to gather this information. But as you're filling out your document, and also Bright has profile sheets that you can download that let you just go through and check all this stuff off. And I'll show you where to find those as well in an email. All right, so then we go into notices. All notifications and amendments under this contract shall be in writing and shall be delivered using the contact information below. So this is the same as our buyer's agreement, except it's the seller and the broker. So again, here, it's the KW emails, the office addresses, the office phone numbers. Don't worry about the cell phone, okay? Terms of agreement. This agreement shall run for the period commencing upon all upon signature by all parties and expiring at 11:59 p.m. on. So what happens if your seller signs it and you put it on the market and you haven't got your broker to sign it? Anybody know?
Well, if something is missing, it's not right.
Right. If the broker hasn't signed it, there is not an agreement between the brokerage and the seller. Okay. So it is your duty to get this to your broker as soon as possible. Right. So in Command, when you have your client sign it electronically, even if you're sitting there in DocuSign with your client and you turn your computer over to them and have them electronically sign it with you, once they finish signing it, it would automatically, if you set it up correctly, go to the broker and it's in their portal to sign. But back in the days of old, people would hold on to these agreements and they may not come to the office for a week or two. So the true essence of contractual law, there is no agreement between the buyer and the broker until the broker signs it. So if you have someone who wants out of the deal and they go to an attorney and say, well, where's the broker's side? It's not a ratified contract. You don't even have a deal with them. You can just walk away. Okay, so that's why you want to be very careful and protect yourself. Okay, so if a sales contract for the property is ratified during the listing period, which provides for a settlement date beyond the listing period, this agreement shall be extended automatically until the final disposition of the sales contract. So let's say I have a 3-month listing agreement. So it's September. So, so we've got October, November, and December 31st. Okay, and let's say we have a property that's settling on January 5th, for example. Okay, so this is saying that because we got a contract before we expired on December 31st, that this contract is valid through the close of that deal. Okay, that's great. It covers me during that period. But my question is, what happens to a contract that was ratified on November 15th and was voided on December 15th? Okay, and then we put it back on the market and we forget that we expired on December 31st, or worse yet, the contract fell through on January 2nd, okay? So I would encourage you, regardless of this paragraph, that you get an amendment to your listing agreement to extend your listing a month or so beyond the closing of the other property when there's a contract, should something go wrong. That way you're covered to automatically and immediately put it back up on the market, okay? And by the way, in MLS, when you put in your listing, it asks you, what is your expiration date? And it's based on your written contract, okay? So you would have to amend that anyway if your contract goes beyond your expiration date, So just cover yourself. Don't be caught unawares, because the moment online, when it goes to expire at midnight that next day, your clients are going to be bombarded with phone calls from other agents wanting to represent them. And they're going to call you up and say, Raekwon, why is this person Monique calling me from your office to see if I can represent her? Monique has just got a list of people she's searched for that has expired listings, and she's just calling like crazy. She may not even recognize that it was Raekwon's listing. You should look to see who you're calling, but not always, okay? Listing price. Now, when you're making up an agreement, there's a couple things that are must-haves. There's some forgiveness when it comes to ratification, but you must have a start date. You must have a termination date, which we just discussed, and you must have a sales price. So you cannot put TBD in here. It is a bad habit that many agents have gotten into over the years, because you might be taking a listing agreement 6 months in advance while they're going to work on repairs, and you don't know what it's going to sell for. Okay, you project a sales price out there during the period of the listing agreement. In the last paragraph, you can say that we will revisit the sales price within 30 days of going on the market, or 2 weeks, or whatever. But you need to put a sales price in there. You could say something like less than $800,000 if you think it might be between 7 and 8. You're not sure, depending on what the market's going to be doing at that time, what improvements the family has decided to do or not do. Okay. But you can't say to be determined. You just can't do that. And then later on, what happens is before you put it on the market, you run all your comps and then you do a listing amendment to solidify what the price would be. And that's what you go from. Okay. But you do need a price in here. Okay. Conveyances. You might hear the word chattels sometimes. We don't hear that much anymore, but years ago you would often hear agents refer to the chattels, which is the conveyances. And in some parts of the state, you might see that word come up in some of the counties. Property includes the following personal property and fixtures, if existing: built-in heating and air conditioning. It says if existing, okay? A house may not have it. It could be being sold as a tear down, right? Plumbing and lighting fixtures, sump pump, attic and exhaust fans, storm windows, storm doors, screens, installed wall-to-wall carpeting, window shades, blinds, window treatments, hardware, smoke and heat detectors, TV antennas, exterior trees, and shrubs. Now, if you have a client who's had a storm door made with glass and has a specific etching in it or their names, okay, yes, they can take their storm door with them. But when you approach the house, it looks like there was a storm door there, okay? If it's never in the listing, if it's never in the pictures, you can sell it without. I would suggest they replace it with a standard storm door and take their personalized one with them before pictures are taken. Yes, this has come up before. So stuff like this does come up. One of our agents in the office years ago sold a property in Vienna, and believe it or not, the sellers took a bunch of their shrubs and trees. You're not permitted to do that. You cannot go in and dig up bushes and stuff. Now, if a seller says right up front, these 3 rose bushes do not convey because they're from a family heirloom, then everyone understands that up front. It's just you don't take them in the middle of the night, you know, and then there's nothing there when the buyer goes to the house after closing. So unless otherwise agreed in writing, all surfaces or wall-mounted electronic component devices do not convey. So if you have a stereo system hanging on the wall, it doesn't convey. If you have a TV hanging on the wall, it doesn't convey. If you have a mirror hanging on the wall, it doesn't convey, unless it's in writing that it does. For more than one of the items that conveys, the number of items is noted down below. You see, you got a column yes, no, or number. You must put yes and you must put no. Do not get in the habit of just putting yes. How easy would it be for someone else to put yes in there without you noticing that they did? Okay? Thereby saying, oh, you signed it that it had a built-in microwave when in fact it didn't because you neglected to put the word no. So if I represent a seller, and because this is the same field that's in the offer, if I represent a seller and I get a contract from the buyer and they've only put in the yes fields and not the no, I go through and put in the no and I do a crosshatch that all parties have to sign. A crosshatch, you know, is 2 lines intersecting where there's 4 quadrants. You don't always have to do a crosshatch anymore. I like them. I still like them because it brings people's attention to that there's a change to what was normally written there. Some agents will just pull the signatures in. But if you have 2 buyers and 2 sellers, you should always have 4 initials stating that they recognize there's a change to that field. Okay. So here, is there an alarm system? Does it convey? Does it not convey? Now, what conveys actually is not the alarm system per se. It's the equipment that conveys because the alarm company, you have to have your separate agreement with them. Okay. It could be a leased item or a purchased item, but it's in the house and it's now, you might be someone who says, look, I don't have anything to do with ADT, for example. I want all their equipment out of the house before I buy it. Okay, so if you do that and you say you want the alarm equipment removed, then you need to say you want the walls or any holes repaired. Because when you do a walkthrough, okay, here's an alarm system and it's setting in the wall in the house, okay? Because it sinks into the wall somewhere and it's sitting there. Some of them sit on the outside of the wall. It's not a big deal. And some of them might be sunk into the wall. When you take that alarm system out, there might be a hole in the wall. Right, or a different color, right. Right, so if I'm saying I want the alarm system removed as a buyer's agent, remember this is the buyer's agent talking in this situation, then you want the wall repaired and you to be specific. I want it plastered or filled in and painted according to the surrounding wall, okay? And we'll get more in depth with that in the contract, but I want you to understand that when the alarm system or an intercom system is setting in a wall, the hole in the wall was there with it sitting in there, it remains there. It's not the only change is that you've asked the device to be removed from there. The seller is not obligated to fix that hole unless the buyer requests it, okay? This comes up a lot. So built-in microwave, that does not mean that the microwave is sitting on the counter. Now, if someone does have a microwave that's sitting on the counter and they want it to convey, it goes here under the other section, countertop microwave. Then you would have no here unless it had a microwave built in and one on the counter, okay? Ceiling fans, how many ceiling fans are in the house? If it's yes, is it one or more? You go through and count. How many ceiling fans are there? Yes?
Question with that. So like say if there's a house and there's 4 ceiling fans, they want to leave the 3, but they want to pick this one.
Okay. The question was if the house says there's 4 ceiling fans, they only want to leave 3 and take 1. If their listing says there's 4 ceiling fans and the contract says there's 4 ceiling fans, the seller has to leave they have to leave 4 ceiling fans. Now what you don't want to happen, and there was a situation where a grandfather had made the blades for a particular fan and it was on a veranda situation. So what we suggested to that listing agent was you have the seller take that fan down and go get a fan and put there and take that family built blade special fan away, okay? Or if someone says, well, I paid $350 for that type of fan with those big blades and I want to take that with me to my new home, okay, fine. Then go get a comparable fan that's less expensive but fits the space. Don't get one that's this big for a big living room, you know, but you do, and the more you can get them to do this before pictures are taken and before it goes live, the better. We had a situation years ago where there was a huge chandelier and online it said it didn't convey, but the pictures showed the chandelier. And then when they took the chandelier down, they went and bought one of those little cheap light fixtures from Home Depot that probably cost less than $100 and put it in a 2-story foyer, okay? Though everything was done legally, so to speak, by contract, it left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. Because you walk in and you see this big chandelier in this 2-story foyer, everyone believes the light fixture's there, okay? They think it's gonna be replaced with like kind, and it wasn't. So anytime a family wants anything specific, a door, fireplace covers, whatever it is, they need to get that out of the home before it goes on the market, or simply put a sign on there that says it does not convey. Make sure everyone knows it does not convey, even going even further in your explanation online, okay? Because what people see in their minds, and that's when the issues come in the end, and it's agents understanding the contract. So the situation of the chandelier, yes, the seller was cheap in what they did, but they didn't do anything contractually wrong, right? They were just cheap in their replacement. But it did not say the chandelier conveyed online. The contract didn't say the chandelier conveyed, but it was the impression that the buyers had, and they felt it was like a flim-flam situation where they were brought into this beautiful entry hall with this chandelier. So that's why you've got to be very careful when you're taking pictures of what conveys and what doesn't convey. For example, washers and dryers, if the family's going to be living in the house during the time of the listing and they want to take their washer and dryer with them, then you need to make sure that online it doesn't say they convey. In the house, you have little notes on there that says it does not convey. Because you can sell a house without appliances, and someone can still buy a house without appliances. There's no law against that. There's no lender law against that. What I'm finding, I've had the benefit of working with a particular age group quite a bit over the years, and they just do not like the newfangled washers and dryers. And frankly, I don't like most of them myself. Maybe I'm getting there. But so they're taking their washer and dryers with them. Some are even taking the refrigerators because they don't like some of the other ones. Sometimes they'll replace them and sometimes they're not. They're just setting the list price based on that. So if they're going to take their washer and dryer, just make sure it's very clear everywhere. And then as a listing agent, when you get an offer, you just make sure that the buyer's agent didn't say that yes, because they looked at the pictures. They or their transaction coordinator, they're just looking at the pictures going, okay, washer, dryer. And they didn't look at the description on what conveys, okay? All right, so cooktop. So, we have different verbiage around the country for different things. So over here, when you see the word stove and range, they're the same thing. It's just the word used in different parts of the country. A stove or range is a device where the cooking surface, whether it be gas, electric, and the oven are all encompassed and enclosed in one device, okay? Whether the oven's above or below the cooking surface. There are ovens that are above the cooking surface, but it's encased in one device that you can pull out at one time, okay, from the wall. It's one device. That's a stove or a range. My grandmother had one that had the oven was up here on the top, stove, cook surface, and below was a warming bin, but it was one device, okay? A cooktop is a cooking top that's set into a counter that could be glass, ceramic, or whatever, could be gas, could be electric, but it's a plate that gets picked up, and all the stuff's down below. Now the oven could be below it, but it's not a stove. It's a wall oven. So wall oven can be below the counter. It can be up here on the wall. It's still a wall oven. It can be directly below the cooktop, which you don't see that too often, but you can. But it's not one unit. Okay, so that's a cooktop versus the wall oven over here. You could have more than one wall oven. I had been in one place that had a stove and a range. They had a cooktop and they had a wall oven. Gourmet kitchen, someone who did a lot of cooking, they chose to have that extra, and they had a convection oven too. So cooktop, dishwasher, disposer. You never assume that everyone has a garbage disposal. You need to make sure they have one and that it works. You say to your seller, do you have a garbage disposal and does it work? Okay, if it doesn't work, I would suggest they get a new one and get it replaced before it goes on the market. Now, if they're saying I want to do as is, then you have to mark it down that item, there is a space for garbage disposal, but it does not work. Okay. Or can be invaded as is. Electronic air filter, ask your clients if they have one. If they don't know what you're talking about, assume no. It's not your job to know what their electricity and their plumbing is like. Is there a fireplace and are there screens and do they convey? Okay. Now if they have a fancy antique screen they don't want to convey, they don't have to make it convey, and they don't have to buy a replacement necessarily, but you got to make sure it doesn't convey. This freezer here is not the freezer that's in the refrigerator that's in the kitchen. This is an external freezer, could be a floor chest-like freezer that could be in the basement, even in the kitchen or in the garage, that they're offering to convey. There could also be 2 refrigerators because there's a refrigerator in the garage or in the basement that are also conveying as well. It does not mean that the buyer has to accept it. We'll get to that when it comes to the contract. Furnace humidifier, again, your client should know. Garage door opener with remote. So there's 3 garages to a house, for example, 2 or 1. Do they have remotes? That means a physical device that I'm going to stick in my car and click it open when I approach it, right? A lot of cars nowadays have that device that you program your car. So one of our agents about 1.5 years ago had a listing, 3 garage doors, put down 3 remotes. The contract was written with 3 remotes. The buyers took over. Where are the remotes to the garage? Listing agent asked the seller, where are the remotes to the garage? We don't have remotes. Our cars are programmed. So that listing agent had to go buy remotes to that garage system so that she could give them to the, because it was in the contract. David Robertson can tell you that story. So, so just be careful when you're talking to your clients nowadays. Do they actually have physical remotes? They could have 3 garages, but they may only be down to 1 remote, okay? So don't assume 3 garages, 3 remotes. They could have 3 garages and 5 remotes. You know, they could have 5 different cars, okay? All right, so then we have a gas log. So if my fireplace is gas, is there a gas log in there? I might have a gas fireplace that I never use and I've never bothered to buy a gas log. So you can't assume because there's a gas fireplace that there's a gas log, okay? And if there's a log in there, is it a gas log? I could have just had logs in there for decorative purposes only. They may not be a gas log. Yeah. Yeah, and they have plastic ones too. They have plastic logs, you know, they look like real. If you don't want to ever use your fireplace, but you want it to look like you have, and they, you know, they have little lights that glow or whatever. Hot tub and covers, do you have it? Do they convey? Same with intercoms, playground equipment, pool covers, refrigerator. Does the ice maker work? Just because you see a refrigerator that's got a spot that you can stick your glass in there and get ice or water does not mean that it's plumbed to the plumbing. Someone may have bought their refrigerator because it was on sale and they never had it plumbed because their old refrigerator was not plumbed. Do you have a question?
Yeah, sorry. This may actually be a very question, but like the pool thing, like how could a pool not convey? Like, or maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe I misunderstood. Like, you know, like there's a backyard pool. Right.
It should, so the pool conveys. Well, maybe someone doesn't want the pool. They want you to fill it in. In fact, someone who's just moving here from another state, I think that's what they did. They filled their pool in. See, pools can be negatives as well as positives, depending on where you are. Now, during COVID, pools have become more of a positive than ever because people are stuck at home. But there may be equipment or covers that someone doesn't want to convey. They don't want to leave them, you know. But, you know, yeah, it is kind of strange. So again, ice makers, be very careful. Also, just because you don't see an ice maker on the external side of the refrigerator, which is rather new technology, there's still going to be an ice maker inside. But again, you must ask, does it actually make ice? Just because it's got the capability to make ice does not mean that it's plumbed. That means there's no little tiny hose that's connecting it to water. It's got to be connected to water in order to make ice, okay? Not every home connects those. They don't want them connected, okay? Years ago, a lot of people didn't want them connected because they were always, when they were the metal ones, they were always getting bends in them and then you would have all this flooding. And I don't know what just happened here. I just hit something. Okay. Trash compactors. You don't often see them anymore. And if you do, people just usually have the door with their trash can setting in it. But years ago, before we had to recycle and separate our trash, you would have these little machines that you would open a drawer and it would have a compression like a dump does with cars, and it would crush your trash down and make it compact. So if you do see trash compactors, chances are they probably are going to be sold as is because they don't work or they've been disabled. Okay.
They don't sell anymore because my grandparents, my father-in-law and mother-in-law used to have it. But they have something that they used to put inside and they don't sell them that anymore.
Right. Yeah, they just put their trash can, or you can buy little devices from other companies that you can open a drawer and have your trash cans inside there. You can have a recycle bin and a trash can bin, and it's using the footprint of the old trash compactors. Yeah. We went over wall ovens, water treatment systems. That's not the pure system necessarily. That's that little device that you might put on your faucet. That's the whole house water treatment, like a Culligan or other softeners. You know, is there a whole house water treatment system?
That's expensive.
Yeah. Window AC units. So you might have a 4-story property. It only has one zone for your AC. So chances are the people on the 4th floor are not getting as much AC as the other floors. So the family might have window AC units on that 4th floor, for example, or in a basement unit. So there could be AC units that fit into the windows. Are they conveying or not? Are there fans? And sometimes there are fans that are in the windows that are very secure and they stay there, you know, through the different seasons or what have you, and can be covered up. So you just have to know if there is a fan, does it convey? Window treatments. So your blinds and the hardware conveys, but are there treatments like curtains or valances that are conveying, okay? And a wood stove is not a fireplace, and a fireplace is not a wood stove. Now, a wood stove could be sitting in a fireplace. That's it. They have it setting into the fireplace or in front of the fireplace, but it's its own separate box that generates heat with wood, okay? They may or may not convey. Now, there are things called pellet stoves as well, and that was where you might find that here under other, that a pellet stove might convey, okay? All right. Now, when it comes to as is, and we're going to stop there right after this discussion. I use my dad, for example. My mom calls him Mr. Preventative Maintenance. He's always making sure everything's working properly and almost too much in some regards, because you can put too much stain on a deck, you know? But when I bought the house from my parents in 2003, Steve was glad of that because my dad and my mom wanted to move out to the country. And my dad would have been that personality who said, I'm not doing anything. I'm selling my house as is. There's nothing wrong with my house. I take care of my house. And you're going to run into clients like that because they have done an excellent job taking care of their home, okay? But when you market a house as is, it is like red flags going off everywhere. Because everyone says, what's wrong with the house? What are they hiding? Virginia's a buyer beware state. Oh my gosh, what are they hiding? So that's where you as a realtor have that finesse, and you're going to learn it with your PC coaches on talking to your sellers about, well, please understand that when a buyer does a home inspection, it's negotiable. So if we say your house is being sold as is, it makes everyone afraid that something's wrong. So they're going to come at it with some trepidation. Where if we just list it and we don't say it's as is, then we're going to negotiate whether you're going to fix that or not, okay? And sometimes they just get down the point and they get so stubborn. And then that's when you want to start, you know, kind of pulling some information, really talking to them about the negative connotations as is. The worst yet is when you see bring your cash buyer. That means there is something wrong with the house and nobody's going to lend to it, okay? But when it's just someone who's everything looks fine, and then they say, well, the refrigerator, I'm not going to fix the refrigerator. It is what it is. Like, okay, well, that's why we have this here. We're going to mark it as is items, as opposed to under B, as is total marketing. We don't want to market your whole house as is. We just want to write down the items that you say are as is, okay? And that kind of takes the pressure off. If you bring out the home inspection contingency, which we'll get to next week, and show them that, that can also take the pressure off of them from understanding that, yes, your house is in great shape. Your house is beautiful. But we want to make sure we're marketing it the best way for you. Okay. All right. So with that, we're going to stop for the day. Anyone have any questions? Everybody still awake out there?
Yes, thank you, Debbie. Thank
I
you,
have
Debbie.
a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for the homework part, we have to do the the seller agreement, and what other addendum do we have to add?
Okay, you're going to do your, even if you've done the exclusive right, I want you to then add the addenda that we went over with this morning, the useful information, the understanding, the cyber, and the, I'm sorry, we did not do the cyber, because go down into your miscellaneous portal on your documents and it tells you what page in the table of contents, but you need to add those to it. So if you go to your table of contents under the buyer's package, I want you to bring all those documents together into one package, filling out what you can fill out, and send that for Falls Church in Fredericksburg to Shannon for her to approve or disapprove. And you can certainly send them to me first, but always CC me on everything. And for Kingstown, you send them to me in a PDF or make me a recipient in your command, but not a signer. Don't put me in the role of brokerage, okay? Because we don't want it to go to your third-party compliance person.
All right, thank you.
So now next week, your homework on Tuesday is going to be the listing agreement. So if those of you want to get started, we've only got, through a few paragraphs of it. But if you want to go through it and see what you can fill out, it's well worth doing for practice.
Is there a property you want us to use for that?
Any property you want, make one up, look one up if you have access to MLS.
Okay.
Yeah.
I missed the homework for the last, I guess on Tuesday. So it's just practicing the buyer broker agreement, making up the person and filling that out, sending it over to Shannon.
Right. So you're going to send it to me as well. So the buyer broker's agreement. And then if you look at your table of contents, it's all the addenda that go along with it. So as if you were doing a live buyer, you're going to send all that over to Shannon for her to approve that you've done it right. Okay.
And Kingstown, we just copy you on it.
Kingstown, if you're doing command, just put me as a recipient, like along with your buyer. So, you make yourself up as the buyers. You're going to send it to yourself to sign and just make me to receive a copy, and then I'll get a copy.
That's a good point. So we use our own email address as the buyer.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Unless you want a family member or something to do it. Yeah, right. Just do that.
I just made up an email, but you're more than likely, if you go to send it through DocuSign, it's going to go somewhere.
Right. And the idea is, as much as you guys can use command to practice, it's better for you. But if you're not fully up with command yet because you're super new, then handwrite it. I'm okay with that, and then just upload the PDFs to Shannon or myself. That's fine too. The idea is for you to learn as much as you can, hand in hand with what you're going to be doing in command. Okay. Anything else?
No. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks so much, Deb.
As always, feel free. Now, Dennis understood this last night. I live out in the country, and I can't really talk on my cell phone for the most part. There are a few times during the day, but when there's storms in the area, it's not as easy. So I can certainly text and email. If I do need to talk to you, you really need to talk, then I can call you from a landline. But texting and emailing works, but the talking doesn't work necessarily. But but if you need to talk, text me, and then if I can get to the landline. Last night, my dad was talking to my nephew, so I couldn't call Dennis back. but I'm working on getting my own phone, but AT&T's got some issues with our area out there right now, hooked up through the internet, so I can have more access. So you guys have more access to me. But it's just where I live, okay? But the texting comes through. I usually turn my phone off at 8, okay? So just know that try to get to me before 8 o'clock at night. Okay, any questions?
Thanks so much, Deb. Awesome.
You're welcome.
Be bright and early on Tuesday, and I won't oversleep my alarm.
You want me to wake you up when I leave Culpeper?
Please, just send it, just smoke signals or yell and scream or send a nasty text message. I'm up, I swear, okay. Whoops.
Now the lady at Starbucks goes, do you need 2 coffees today or 1? He's like, well, if the caffeine helped me at all, I would,
Right. I'll take all of them, please. All of them.
Well, I tell you, with COVID, the drive is less. Sometimes it used to take me 2.5, 3 hours to get here.
Jeez.
Wow.
Yeah. In the morning.
Where do you live again? I missed the name.
North Culpeper.
Culpeper. Yeah.
So North Culpeper itself is another 35 minutes from where I live.
Oh.
Yeah. I live about 11 miles from Warrington.
Okay, I'm with you now. Oh, yeah. Okay.
2 miles from here.
Yeah.
See y'all later.